to me, the two things that stood out the most. One, after 2 years of essentially not allowing anyone to appear anywhere in Washington, D.C., if you were a Democrat, without wearing a mask, masks were gone. We saw Joe Biden striding slowly across the White House lawn on Monday in his ridiculous, oversized black face mask. And by Tuesday, he is walking down the center of the House of Representatives aisle, shaking hands, awkwardly even headbutting, if you guys haven't seen that video, as if COVID had never existed. Nancy Pelosi awkwardly behind him, sort of gyrating in weird directions, looking super strange, also not wearing a mask. Joe Biden can't tell the difference between reading Ukraine and reading Iran on his teleprompter. Strange ending of go get 'em, but the maskless thing stood out. And then, Buck, what you and I have both described as the single dumbest political argument of the 21st century, defunding the police. Biden now is going to ride into the future claiming essentially that defund the police never existed. Listen to how aggressively he not only flips the script, he says defund the police is out and it's time to fund the police. And he sounds a lot like Clay Travis and Buck Sexton when he says it. Listen to cut 8.
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe.
Okay, and that, I think we have a cut here of, just to reinforce for all of you, that's the exact opposite of what Democrats have argued for 2 years. Ever since George Floyd, they've argued that we do need to, in fact, defund the police. I believe we have a cut. They did a great job immediately getting this out last night. You can go listen to it. But I think it's important to not allow Democrats to now try, in the wake of this massive increase in murders, massive increase in violent crime, to argue that they have been the party of wanting to fund the police. Listen to this cut of all the Democrats saying, no, we need to defund the police.
So we've been talking about defunding the police.
There's some issues that we ask police to do, like mental health issues or policing in schools and all the rest, that perhaps we can shuffle some of that money around.
Suck it up. Defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police.
Mayor Eric Garcetti saying, take some of the money from policing, about $150 million.
I applaud Eric Garcetti for doing what he's done.
Not only do we need to disinvest in police, but we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
So yes, defund your butts. Defund you.
Yes, I support the reallocation of resources from NYPD.
We will be moving funding from the NYPD to youth initiatives and social services.
They are talking about reducing the allocation of resources to that department, and I think every single city in this country ought to be thinking about the same thing.
Pretty sure there's a lot of Democrats there, Clay,
yes,
saying defund the police, and that here's what Biden shouldn't be allowed to get away with. While all that was being said, where were the Democrats who were pointing out the obvious, which was that was just sheer madness? We didn't need to go through what we've seen with the huge spike in crime across the country to know what the results would be. This is like saying I could have stopped them before they lit the match and threw it into the kerosene-soaked rag in the house, but I wanted to see what would happen first. We all knew exactly what was going to happen, and we saw buildings burned down. We saw police being assaulted and attacked. Democrats went along with this because Democrats are the party of the mob, and it was useful in the 2020 election year. Remember, everybody was scared, right? They were scared about COVID, and then they were scared about the riots. We had an election. They often talk about the integrity of our democracy, the sanctity of our democracy. We had a 2020 election where business owners across America in major cities had to board up their businesses because they were afraid the Democrat might lose. We all know that's what that was about. It's why there weren't riots. And then they want to lecture all of us about accepting election results. And then on the COVID thing, which I know you got into a second ago, Clay, I mean, so defund, we were right, they were wrong. And everyone who
Yes.
said defund wasn't crazy was either crazy themselves or lying to you and pandering, so much pandering from Pelosi and the rest. And then on the COVID issue, I almost couldn't believe it. So they're unmasked,
Yes.
but they're sitting socially distanced from each other, which this is pure religious expression now. I mean, this is purely Fauciism shown to everybody as I'm a good person. So social distancing, may I remind everybody, is a totally made up, absurd idea in the first place. Real social distancing is stay away from sick people. Stay 6 feet apart from people in the elevator, in line. I mean,
Stand in your little spots.
In
It's
a
all
little-
stupid. Sit in your circle.
People were being told to social distance. I'll never forget this. In line outside for the grocery store in the winter of 2020, and I was among them. And then we went indoors, and we were all shoulder to shoulder,
Yes.
fighting over the last dried pasta and canned soup because we were all gonna have the collapse of civilization. Fauci says so. It was absurd. They're socially distanced. That's an idiotic term. It's a made up. It doesn't even make any sense. And how
Yes.
they did these things because they, one, do not accept that they were wrong, and two, they made it clear last night. I mean, Biden actually said as much, that they're not done. When he says this is endemic, Clay, they're preparing for COVID 3.0 or whatever, 4.0, the next time around, the next major wave. They're going to do all this crazy crap again. That was clear from the State of the Union last. That's really one of the only things that was clear. That and Biden going, a lot of Biden babbling.
He was a mess. And also he spent a lot of his time, Buck, arguing in favor of Build Back Better. And then did you see, like 5 minutes after the State of the Union, somebody found Joe Manchin, and Joe Manchin was like, yeah, Build Back Better's dead. So the State of the Union, you get a relatively limited amount of time to talk to that many Americans. And Biden spent a huge portion of his State of the Union on Build Back Better, which is dead. And, you know, you start to think about the timing, and I don't know about you, but we've got the Supreme Court justice, which is probably going to take a month or so to get that all the way through. That's going to take us well into April. As we get into April, do we really think that the Democrats are going to pass something substantial in terms of a tax increase a couple of months before the midterm elections? That seems highly unlikely to me. It feels to me as if Biden's agenda is effectively over. And now we wait and see what happens in Ukraine. We feel very good about Republicans taking back the House, maybe also the Senate. Either way, that makes it virtually impossible for anything to get passed for 2 years. So I look at Biden and I think to myself, he looks so awful. I mean, so awful. There's very limited faith that I have that he can last physically 3 more years. And I don't know that the country can make it through 3 more years of him, but I don't know what other options we have. And it feels as if basically he's done. Like there's nothing more that he's going to be able to accomplish as president at this point.